County Mayo lies on the west coast of Ireland, bearing all the characteristics of its continuous fight with the mighty Atlantic Ocean. From pounding erosion, the offshore islands were isolated and paid a price for their resistance. The softer, more accommodating coastline contrasts its inlets and beaches, overlooked by mighty headlands. Mayo has a natural beauty, its rugged heart coloured by the changing flora of the seasons. The people of Mayo have been as resilient as the land itself. They have suffered in their time. Famine, eviction, and emigration have left indelible marks on both the landscape and the hearts of its people. Mayo today may be influenced by the past, but it produced men and women who are outstanding and richly deserve to be remembered. The streets of the market towns in Mayo are vibrant with all aspects of commercial activity. On the farms, modern machines are busy at work. Mayo is now well established in an industrial and competitive world, an educated and talented workforce attracting companies from North America, Japan, Germany, and Europe to a county rich in development potential in a quiet and beautiful setting. Gaeltacht Éireann plays a crucial role in providing a niche for traditional Gaeltacht crafts. Tradition in the countryside also maintains its place. The pitchfork will never be obsolete in Mayo, but it's often the natural wool textiles that we associate with the West, the woven colours and the subtle blends which evoke the palette of the natural landscape. It is on that tradition that Foxford has based its successful international reputation. The county of breathtaking land and seascapes, with ever-changing light, provides a powerful attraction for foreign visitors and Irish people alike. Mayo emigrants have an added interest as they pursue the memories of times past and revive links with their heritage, which binds them to the county's richness in a special way. Jim Cusack, now retired, returns to his birthplace every year. Ever industrious, he makes violins as a hobby, but more importantly, he plays as well. For the courteous Mayo people, there is always time to assist a visitor with advice and local directions, while the tourist offices scattered throughout the county provide professional and wide-ranging service. The interests of Mayo's tourists are varied. There are those who come to enjoy the solitude of angling on a river bank or pool. There are the energetic types who adopt a more active pattern, and of course, those who take it all in quietly in a land that caters for everyone, far away from the hustle and pressure of city life.
I enjoy it especially when I come back here to Ireland, just visiting people that I knew before I left, or they're maybe another generation or two generations, and they have time to sit down and make a cup of tea and talk to you, where we have not that kind of time in the United States. Everybody is running like crazy. They're raising their children, they're working, and it's such a pleasure to have just to relax.
Between Lough Cullen and Lough Conn lies Pontoon, a lakeside paradise for those who fish the native brown trout or salmon. Surely it was places like Pontoon and fishermen like Alan Pearson that Isaac Walton had in mind when he wrote The Complete Angler.
The greatest thing for me about Mayo is the fishing. The sea fishing, for example, is really fantastic. You can fish from the rocks or you can beach cast and catch a wide variety of fish. You can go out in the boats and the fish you can catch out there you wouldn't even believe. Apart from the normal cod and eel and things like that, there's also the deep sea big game species such as blue marlin, broadbill swordfish, bluefin tuna. There's competitions for the biggest fish, the biggest catch, and excellent prizes, usually sponsored by somebody. There's festivals out of all the major ports, and this happens several times a year. The game fishing is wonderful. You can take the River Moy, in my view, the most productive salmon river in Europe for Atlantic salmon. There may be one or two rivers in America with Pacific salmon that have more fish, but I doubt it. The Ridge Pool in Ballina is the most productive salmon pool in the world. I've stood there and seen 3,000 salmon in that small pool, not once, but many, many times. And the great thing is that they're not idiots. They don't give themselves up. You really have to be a good angler to catch them. But my greatest love is the trout fishing. And here on Loch Con, I can fish the way I want to fish and catch the wild brown trout. This is one of the few strongholds of the wild brown trout left in the world. And they truly are wild. I go out there under that great sky. I can't think of a better place to be. It's a paradise for the painter, the landscape painter, for the photographer, or even people who just like to walk and look.
The recent past is still fresh in the folkways and memories of Mayo people. But what is our knowledge of the earliest inhabitants of this area? How did they tend and tame the land and stock? Now archaeologists are reading the remains on the landscape and establishing a picture of the first farming communities here. The flat peatlands of Caja Fields in North Mayo have revealed the existence of a farming community which is over 5,000 years old. These people built houses, subdivided the land into fields with stone walls, raised cattle, and worked at land tillage. Their tombs and sacred places have been recorded as skilled and enthusiastic hands worked to discover more information about these prehistoric people. Visible stone remains are a testament to communities and generations long gone. Mayo has some examples of the earliest passage or wedge-shaped tombs from the megalithic period, which may be found throughout the county. But perhaps Mayo's richest heritage in stone comes from the medieval monastic period. Examples of stone churches, monasteries and abbeys are dotted throughout the landscape on mainland and on island holdings. The resilient stone towers and gables proclaim the skilling and craftsmanship of their builders. One of these stone abbeys in particular is a symbol of the religious fidelity of Mayo people throughout 700 years. Ballintubber Abbey was restored recently, having been without a roof for hundreds of years. But Mass was still celebrated throughout that time. The history of the abbey is a rich one. Many early monastic remains are to be found, and there are also, beside the abbey building, beautifully carved stone cloisters and parts of old wallsteads from the monastery. Ballintubber also marks the start of the route Tóchar Fáric, which was the ancient pilgrim's walk to Croagh, the holy mountain of Ireland's patron saint. Traditionally, pilgrims have climbed the mountain on the last Sunday in July. The pathway up the side of the mountain is busy with pilgrims ascending and descending throughout the day. St. Patrick stayed on the holy mountain to pray for the people of Ireland, and today a small church on the summit, dedicated to the saint, marks the end of the pilgrimage. Clew Bay is synonymous with Grace O'Malley, or Gráinne Wheel, the legendary sea queen of the west of Ireland. She was born around 1530, and on the death of her father, she proclaimed herself ruler of the district around the bay. In 1566, she married Richard Burke, chief of the Mayo Burkes, and they lived at Rockfleet Castle. She controlled the O'Malley clan's trade to Ulster, Munster, Scotland, Spain, and Portugal, and she also engaged in pirating cargo ships. She visited Queen Elizabeth I in 1593, and demonstrated her navigational skills by sailing up the Thames to London. Grace O'Malley died in 1600 and is believed to have been buried in the O'Malley tomb in the Carmelite Friary on Clare Island. Killala Bay was the setting for what was to become a tragic and ill-fated adventure. The French Revolution was causing repercussions throughout Europe, and French aid was promised to all who sought liberty. Wolfe Tone requested help for Ireland, and an expedition of 3 ships with over 1,000 soldiers under the command of General Humbert arrived in Killala Bay in 1798. A small force of English yeomen retreated before the superior French and Irish forces, and Humbert took over the town. An important objective was to take Castlebar. After Ballina fell to the combined Irish and French forces, Humbert was persuaded to approach Castlebar by the mountain pass known as the Windy Gap. This was good strategy, and the English were taken by surprise. Fierce fighting took place in the narrow streets. There were many casualties on both sides, but the brilliant French leadership carried the day. Most of the English soldiers ran away, which caused the event to be recorded in history as the Races of Castlebar. A municipal council was established in Castlebar, and John Moore of Moore Hall was appointed President of the Republic of Connaught on the 31st of August 1798. While the French and Irish enjoyed initial success, it was short-lived and Humbert returned to France. The monument on French Hill commemorates the brave Frenchmen who died for Ireland in 1798. As a boy, John McHale saw the French soldiers march through the Windy Gap on their way to Castlebar in 1798. He was born near Lahardon in the parish of Adragool on March the 6th, 1791. His early education was at a local hedge school. He was ordained in 1814 and was appointed Coadjutor Bishop of Killala in 1825. In 1827, he started to build St. Murdoch's Cathedral in Ballina, which was opened 4 years later. When he was appointed Archbishop of Tuam in 1834, it was to the great displeasure of the British establishment. Archbishop John McHale was involved in all the major issues of his time and had strong nationalistic tendencies, probably influenced by his experience as a boy, when he witnessed the body of his pastor, Father Conroy, being brought back to Lahardon after he had been hanged in Castlebar for his part in the 1798 Rising. Dr. McHale became embroiled in a bitter dispute with Bishop Thomas Plunkett, the Anglican Bishop of Tuam, Killala and Aconry. The bishop spent little time in Tuam, preferring his lodge on the shore of Loch Mask, where he built a church. He put pressure on the local Catholic tenantry to send their children to Protestant schools. Dr. McHale appointed Father Lavelle as parish priest of Partry to combat the zeal of proselytism of Bishop Plunkett, who owned most of the land in the parish of Partry at that time. This led to a high degree of tension in the area. Bishop Plunkett had evicted 165 people for refusing to comply with his wishes. Later, at the Castlebar Assizes early in 1860, he secured 60 ejectment decrees. None of the tenants had arrears of rent. 17 families, 68 people in all, were evicted in the townland of Derrivini in November 1860. Dr. McHale had Catholic schools built in the area, and his determination won the day. Dr. McHale died in 1881 and was laid to rest beneath the altar in the Catholic Cathedral in Tuam. Father Lavelle was later appointed parish priest of Cong, where he died in November 1886 and was buried in Cong Abbey.
Bishop Plunkett, who didn't leave a very happy memory behind him here still, was love of the place and is buried here. Father Pat Lavelle went to his funeral and spoke well of him of the altar on the following Sunday after his burial, after he's dead. Thank God all those days are past, and we have good relations with our Protestant brethren.
There are few clues on the landscape that mark the most traumatic and desolate episode in the history of Mayo. In the famine of 1846 to 1849, Mayo lost 1/4 and possibly 1/3 of its population. But for those who know where to find them, mass graves are a sad reminder of the hunger, disease, and agonizing deaths that decimated the nation. Benign landlords, notably the Moores of Moore Hall and the Vaughans, tried to alleviate the suffering while others ignored it. One event that encapsulates the horror and tragedy that faced the people of Mayo occurred in 1849, when 600 men, women, and children died as they trekked across the Mayo Mountains in search of food. They went through this beautiful pass after leaving Louisburg to travel to Delphi Lodge, where they heard that food was available. They were turned away when they arrived there. The stone cross overlooking the lake commemorates the dead. The last of the Gaelic bards, Anthony Raftery, was born in Killeeden, near Culchermaw, in 1784. In the green pasture of his birth, there is no trace of his home. Stricken with smallpox, which left him blind at the age of 9, his extraordinary talents overcame his handicap. In his early years, he worked for the nearby Taff family at Killeeden House. His main occupation, we're told, was looking after the horses. Following a row with Frank Taff over an injured horse, Raftery, blind and penniless, left Mayo. Because he could not write, he was particularly attracted to the area around Craughwell in Galway, where his poems were committed to paper by the Clunan family, among others.
That night before he died, he called here and he was very ill, so they wanted him to go into the house. They had a bed fixed up from inside in the house, and he said no, he refused. He said he lived all his life a tramp and he'd die as one, so he wanted to die outside. He went out in the shed, and some hours later he died. And the story goes that sometime later on that night he was taken, when the priest came and anointed him, he was taken by horse and cart to Killeen and buried there.
One of his most famous poems is remembered by most Irish people. Mishi Raftrian Fidalon Dochishis Graw Le Sulig on Solus Le Cuinis Con Craw. He lies at rest in Killeen churchyard. Solus J. Ir Alan Girish. The poignant themes of Raftery's poetry are also reflected in music and song.
First place I saw her, 'twas in the church stand, gold rings on her finger, and her love by the hand. Says I, my wee lassie, I will be the man, although you are wed to another. Oh, make now my grave both large, wide, and deep, and sprinkle it over with flowers so sweet, and lay me down in it to take my last sleep, for that's the best way to forget her.
It is fitting that in the village of Strabes that Mayo's most famous son is best remembered. He was born here in 1846, and after a lifetime of hardship and struggle, he was to know eventual success. Davitt was never to forget the eviction experience when, as a 4-year-old, he witnessed the family home being levelled to the ground because of rent arrears. With his family, he emigrated to Lancashire, where he had the further misfortune of losing an arm in a cotton mill at the age of 9. Davitt came to prominence in Ireland when he arranged a meeting of the oppressed tenantry in Irishtown in April 1879. The fear of famine and eviction made the area a hotbed of tension. The depressed social conditions spurred Davitt into action. The meeting was well attended. Eviction notices previously issued were withdrawn and rent reductions achieved. The obelisk in Irishtown commemorates this important event. After further meetings throughout the county, the Mayo Land League was formed in Daly's Hotel, now the Imperial, in Castlebar on the 16th of August 1879. In Dublin, the Mayo League was incorporated into the National Land League. It was agreed that Home Rule and land reform would be pursued only by constitutional means. Charles Stewart Parnell, MP, was elected president and Davitt one of its secretaries. This approach was called the New Departure. With Parnell in Westminster and Davitt active in the country, the landlords faced a formidable team. The most effective weapon used by the League was ostracization, and the most celebrated incident took place here at Lochmask House, the then home of Captain Boycott. After Lord Erne forced Boycott, his land agent, to increase rents, the locals stopped working or cooperating on the estate. Eventually, the harvest was brought in by Orangemen and soldiers at a cost of £10,000. Boycott had to leave. The local priest coined a phrase to symbolize the effect of non-violent protest, and the word boycott has been part of the English language ever since. It took the famous Kilmainham Treaty, negotiated while Parnell was in prison, and the Wyndham Land Act of 1903 to allow full ownership of the tenantry. Parnell and Davitt were freed from jail, and the fight for the land was over. The Davitt Museum in Strade holds much of his memorabilia and reminds us of the high esteem in which he was held at home and abroad. Throughout his life, he overcame his handicap and brought his intellectual development to a high level through self-education. In his various roles as journalist, MP, writer and campaigner, he unceasingly pursued the interests of the poor and oppressed. The father of the Land League, who died in 1906, was laid to rest in Strade, as he himself requested. One Mayo man who was to make a major impact abroad was Admiral Brown, who was born in Foxford on June the 22nd, 1777. Brown went to Buenos Aires in 1809, where his prowess as a naval commander won significant victories for Argentina. The Argentine people still hold him in high esteem.
Admiral Brown, born in County Mayo in Ireland, became a mythical person in Argentina, because he came to Argentina and he became the father of the Navy, and he is one of the most revered fathers of the independence of my country. Our admiration for him is such that even the equivalent of an Irish county near the capital city of Buenos Aires is called Almirante Brown. That means Admiral Brown. We owe so much to Ireland to have sent us one of her most distinguished sons. And we are all proud of him, of what he has achieved, and personally, I'm very proud to be the ambassador of Argentina in the country of his birth.
He died in Boca in May 1857 and was buried in the Recoleta Cemetery in Buenos Aires. Back in the 40s, there was no choice in the methods of saving crops or winning turf. Manpower and womanpower were the order of the day. Many hands made light work, and the fun and crack made the day all the shorter, as did the well-earned breaks for tea. It was the same population that eventually had to look further than Mayo for the means to support themselves and their elderly relatives back home. Emigration was to strike Mayo hard again in the years after the war. From the little railway stations throughout the West, the steam engines carried young men and women away on the first stage of a journey which would see them scattered to England, Australia, and the USA. On the gable of the village church at Knock, local people saw an apparition on the 21st of August 1879, which was to change what was then a typical Irish village into a place of contemplation and worship, and various miraculous cures began to be documented. It was when Monsignor James Horan from Turin, then a simple country priest, was appointed to Knock that the shrine with the basilica became famous throughout the world. His most spectacular success was achieved in 1979, when a request for Pope John Paul II to visit Knock for the first centenary of the apparition was the inspiration for the papal visit to Ireland.
You are Archbishop here. Very nice to see you.
Very welcome, Your Holiness. I really couldn't believe it. It was hard to think it was true, because it's such a marvellous privilege, you see, for the Holy Father to come to visit a country, and that he has visited so few countries, and that ours is a small country, but maybe big in God's eyes, I don't know.
He also achieved another lifelong ambition when rough Mayo Mountain was transformed into an international airport. Adequate government funds were not available. Undaunted, Monsignor Horan appealed to the public for finance and succeeded with the help of friends, particularly Mayo people at home and abroad, in making the airport a reality.
Monsignor Horn himself personally, and with one flick of this scissors, I will declare this airport officially open.
I feel wonderful. We had an audience with the Holy Father. I do believe that he will come here and that he'll kiss the ground here at Barnalira.
It was on a visit to Lourdes that this charismatic man died. James Horan was a well-known and much-loved priest in and around Mayo, and his name is synonymous with Knock.
Come by the hills to the land where fancy is free, and stand where the peaks meet the sky and the rocks meet the sea, where the rivers run clear and the bracken is gold in the sun, and cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done. Come by the hills to the land where life is a song, and sing while the birds fill the air with their joy all day long, where the trees sway in time and even the wind sings in tune, and cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done. Come by the hills to the land where legends remain, where stories future has still to be won, and cares of tomorrow must wait till this day is done.
The elegant Grace Kelly, once Hollywood movie star and later Princess of Monaco, visited the homestead of her ancestors near Newport in 1976. Unfortunately, her plans to restore her grandfather's home were not fulfilled. She died in a car accident in 1982, and the ruins of the house still remain. The village of Cong was chosen by director John Ford for the classic film The Quiet Man. John Wayne, Maureen O'Hara, and Barry Fitzgerald were the stars. John Daly worked on the film and provided facilities such as horses, riders, and sidecars.
We could get a message here at 12 o'clock at night to have 12 riders and 2 Johnson cars and fences and all built over it. Let you get you at 8:30 in the morning. And you might be there for 3 weeks before they asked you where you were going, you know. Barry Fitzgerald then used to drive the sidecar, and we had 2 sidecars and 2 black horses. And to get in the scenery, they used to send me to Connemara with the sidecar dressed up as Barry Fitzgerald. And they did a close-up with him then. But one day he was going through a gate at Ashford, and he pulled the wrong reins, and the old sidecar turned upside down. He got a scratch in his face, you know. Barry Fitzgerald was a lovely man, a real gentleman, and he was such a character, you know. And of course you couldn't beat John Wayne. He was as tough as they come. He was a great man. All we didn't have for the quiet man was the 6 gun. John Wayne was an excellent rider. I mean, he could come flying down there on that horse, galloping really. And Maureen O'Hara was also very, very hard in, as good as they come, I think, you know. She took a lot of punishment in the making of the film, and running into water and getting dragged across the fields and all that, you know. She was a good hardy actress, I can tell you that.
Regarded as one of the world's great prima donnas, Margaret Burke Sheridan was born in Castlebar in 1889. She received her early education in the convent across the Mall from her home. Her musical education began in Dublin under the direction of Sister Clement, a Dominican nun. At the peak of her career, her golden voice was heard and applauded in the great opera houses of Europe. Her last years were spent in Dublin. She died in St. Vincent's Nursing Home in Leeson Street and was buried in Glasnevin Cemetery. Born near Claremorris in 1902, Delia Murphy, with her distinctive ballad style, captivated audiences during the 40s and 50s. She performed in England, Italy, America, Canada, and Australia. She died in February 1971 and was buried in Dean's Grange Cemetery in Dublin. The festive spirit which prevails in Mayo's towns and villages during the summer provides an opportunity for locals and visitors alike to enjoy good music and fun in convivial company. However, there are the resourceful few who still provide their own music in quiet and beautiful surroundings. Here in Bohola is a statue erected to Martin Sheridan, who was arguably the greatest athlete that ever came from this island. He was born in Bohola on March the 28th, 1881. He emigrated to America in 1900 and became a member of the New York police force. This statue to his memory was unveiled in 1966. Among those present were his brother Andrew Sheridan and J.R. Tunney, son of the famous boxer Gene Tunney, whose parents came from nearby Killeeden. On lands donated by Mayo's famous Dwyer brothers near the town of Colchemaw stands a Cheshire home, where many of Martin Sheridan's trophies and other memorabilia are on view. During his career, he excelled as a discus thrower in the shot put, pole vault, and high and long jumps. He won 9 Olympic medals, 5 gold, 3 silver, and 1 bronze. He also won 30 Canadian and Metropolitan titles and 12 American championships. In a performance unequaled in the history of athletics at Madison Square Garden, New York in 1909, he took 5 firsts, 2 seconds, and 1 third, and established 2 world records.
Martin Sheridan, he was born back the road here in an old homestead, and there was a big family in the minute. He immigrated to America, but in 1906, in Athens, the King of Greece reckoned that he was the greatest athlete of his day. He won more track and field events than any other athlete in the world. So he bamboo pole as the hero of Athens. And after the Athens Olympics, he came to Ballina to give a demonstration on the pole vault. And he jumped something in the region of 9'10", which was a big jump for the bamboo pole at the time. And when he jumped, he came down on his ankle. And he turned to my grandfather, Pat Clark, and he said, "Here, Pat, keep this." And a pole like that is presented by a king. We're very proud of it. And I have it here in the pub in Bohola.
He died in March 1918 from pneumonia at the age of 37 and is buried in New York. Seamus O'Malley, now a retired school teacher, captained the first Mayo team to win the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship in 1936. Having beaten Galway in the replay of the Connacht Senior Football Championship, Mayo subsequently defeated Kerry in the All-Ireland semi-final, thus qualifying for the final at Croke Park.
Our opponents were Laois, and we had a great win. We won by something like 4 goals and 11 points to 5 points. It was, I think, the biggest score recorded in the final up to that. So, at the presentation of the cup, in those days, only the captain went up to receive the cup, and he couldn't go up straight up the steps as they do now. He had to go, that was after togging out. He went back and up the set of steps at the back of the Hogan stand and up there to meet the president to present the cup. And there were no celebrities there. The president in that particular year was a Laois man named Bob O'Keefe, and he presented the cup, and I said my own few words, and then he brought the cup back to Barry's Hotel. Of course, we displayed it there several times from the top windows, and we got a great cheering. Bringing the cup back was the greatest thrill of my life, yes, it was.
The renowned Sean Flanagan, who captained the Mayo team to victory in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championships in 1950 and 51, was an avid football enthusiast from a very early age. In St. Jarlath's Secondary College in Tuam, he came under Father Malone's expert tuition in Gaelic football. And later he trained under the great Jim McGowan, who had been a member of the 1936 team. Mayo gathered experience and strength, and eventually in 1950, the team of all the talents arrived in Croke Park. The team beat Louth in 1950 and Meath in 51.
By the time we came to 1950, it was an experienced and very, very determined team that got out there in Croke Park for the semi-final and the final. There was no way we were going to be disappointed again.
Sean Flanagan of Mayo.
Although Loud gave us a great match, a very sporting match, as they always did.
Will the Mayo men retain the title they took in 1950? Referee Bill Delaney of
We
Leeds
had done
tosses the coin.
a good deal of analysis of Meade's strengths and what I in particular perceived as weaknesses. And we exploited those successfully in the final.
And so to the throw-in, and the battle for the 1951 title is on. Mayo break away from the start, but despite their efforts, Meade are the team in the early stages. Playing with great dash and aided by the breeze, they give their followers every hope of victory as Mayo's Joe Staunton and his associates are pressed into repeated action. The ever-active Tom Langan gets the ball in his hand and crashes his way through for a goal that does much to put his county on the road to victory. But Mayo returned to the attack, and despite the resistance of Kevin McConnell, Pádraig Carney, the Mayo man of the match, scores from a free and paves the way for Eamon Nongi to score a point. These reverses urge the Meade side to further attacks with Matty MacDonald, Brian Smith, and the inevitable man in the cap, Peter McDermott, figuring in the chief actions. But Mayo's full back line, with Paddy Prendergast settling down to his brilliant game, foiled the challengers. And now for the movement that brings Mayo's second goal as Dixon passes to Sean Mulderrig. He gets the ball through to Joe Gilvary, and he sends through his goal to make the half-time score. Mayo 2 goals and 3 points. Meade 8 points. The second half is on with the writing on the wall as far as Meade are concerned. But with that undying spirit, they refuse to read it, and despite further arrears, come battling back. Yes, it's Mayo's day of victory, for plates homeward bound for hundreds now, even before the final whistle. And when this does go, it's a signal for the crowds to surge onto the field to cheer the victors. And while praising the winners, let us not forget the great sportsmen of Meade, defeated yet honored too. While on the Hogan stand, Mr. Vin Donoghue, a vice president of the GAA, presents the Sam Maguire Cup to Sean Flanagan. And as the crowds look on, the Mayo officials are happy with the smiles of victory.
On Monday, December the 3rd, 1990, Mrs. Mary Robinson, formerly Mary Burke from Ballina, was inaugurated as President of Ireland in St. Patrick's Hall, Dublin Castle. It is the highest honour that the Irish people can bestow on one of its citizens.
Beyond our state, there is a vast community of Irish emigrants, extending not only across our neighbouring island, which has provided a home away from home for several Irish generations, but also throughout the continents of North America, Australia, and of course Europe itself. There are over 70 million people living on this globe who claim Irish descent. I will be proud to represent them. And I would like to see Áras an Uachtaráin, my official residence, serve on something of an annual basis as a place where our emigrant communities could send representatives for a get-together of the extended Irish family abroad.
the shamrock and heather, in search of a living as exiles we roam. But whenever we chance to assemble together, we think of the land where we once had a home. But these homes are destroyed and our soil confiscated. The hand of the tyrant brought plunder and woe. The fires are now quenched and our hearts desolated. Our once happy homes in the county Mayo. Long years have now passed since, with hearts full of sorrow, the land of the shamrock we left far behind. But how we would like to go back there tomorrow, to the scenes of our youth which we still bear in mind. The days of our childhood, it's now we recall them. They cling to our vision wherever we go, and the friends of our youth, we will never forget them. They too are exiled from the county Mayo. From historic Killala, from Swinford to Calla, Ballyhornis and Westport and Old Castlebar, Kiltimagh, Claremorris, Belmullet and Erris, Kilkenny and Knocknad is famed near and far. Ballinrobe, Ballina and Balhora, Keelos and Foxford a few miles below, Newport and Cong with those Thread and Balnola, Charlestown too in the county Mayo. From Galway to Dublin, from Derry to Kerry, New York and Frisco and Boston also, in Pittsburgh, Chicago, Detroit and Toronto, there are stout-hearted men from the county Mayo. Now boys, pull together in all sorts of weather. Don't show the white feather wherever you go. Act each as a brother and help one another, like true-hearted men from the county Mayo.